Welcome to Law Excellence Hindu News Analysis. Today we are going to cover these four topics. The topics are CJA recuses himself from hearing the case over tree felling in Delhi rich. Global South hit by food fuel crisis due to conflicts. Chennai Vladivostok Maritime Corridor is operational. And NHRC issue in Telangana. Manipur has a case for imposing Article 356. Sanjay Murthy appointed a new CAG. Now coming to the first article. Now this article says that CJA recuses himself from hearing a case over tree felling in Delhi Ridge. Now, the context of the news is that recently, new Chief Justice of India, Sanjeev Kanya, recuses himself to hear a contempt of court petition against Lieutenant Governor. Why? This Lieutenant Governor somewhat related to the CJA as they both are interacted in one of the instances in the past. Now, from the examination perspective, from GS4 perspective, this article is very important because in GS4 there is a concept called conflict of interest. Now, in that conflict of interest concept, you can use this case as an example where CJI recuses himself from hearing a case. Now, this is not important from the polity perspective, but this is important from the GS4. Now, many people read the newspaper, but they don't know how to use them in the examination. Now, this is how you can use smartly in GS4. Now, there is two types of conflict of interest. One is actual conflict of interest, and another one is potential conflict of interest. Now, potential conflict of interest is the one in which there is a chance of conflict of interest, but actually there is no conflict of interest. But actual conflict of interest is that it is something that really the decision is biased. Now, in this case, CJA may act neutrally, but apprehensively or on apparently, it does not show objectivity, right? Now, in that context, to avoid such instances, he recuses himself from hearing such case. Now, you can use this in GS4 conflict of interest. Now, moving to the next article. Now, this article is about G20 presidency that's happening in the Brazil. Now, in this presidency, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that it applauded Brazil's presidency in taking forward decisions that are taken at the New Delhi summit, such as one Earth, one family, one future. Now, it applauded Brazil for taking people-centric decisions, especially regarding sustainability, energy transition, and issue of multilateralism, and addressing the global inequalities, things like that. Now, in this context, PM Modi mentioned certain facts that are important that you can use them in your mains examination also. It said that Indian government pulled around 25 crore people out of poverty in the last 10 years. Now, Modi highlighted that India is providing to 80 crore people a free food ration. It also highlighted around 55 crore people are benefiting from the health insurance schemes. Around 6 crore senior citizens are getting the free health insurance. Around 30 crore micro entrepreneurs are supporting through various government schemes. And in India, due to the climate change effects, and India developed 2000 climate resilient crop varieties and promoting the digital agriculture missions. Now, all these are the things you should be keep in mind so that you can use them as an examples in the mains examination. Now, this G20 conference is important from the prelims perspective because previously prelims questions asked regarding the G20. Now, we will see that. Now, before that, there is an important point set by the Prime Minister that if our discussions are not focused on global south, if we don't take the priorities of the global south, then these discussions are unfruitful. Now, you can use this point in GS paper 2 in the international relations also. Now, PM Modi highlighted one of the important points that global south is hit by the food fuel fertilizer. Now, why it is said like that? In the Middle East, there is a lot of violence and political crises are happening. Now, Middle East is one of the important source of energy security, especially crude oil, right? Now, another important thing is that there is a conflict happening between the Russia and Ukraine. Now, both these countries are important exporters of wheat and fertilizers such as phosphorus. Now, in this context, Modi said that this lead to the supply chain disruptions and hence global south is more disrupted in terms of trade. Now, this is what the context of the news. Now, we will see certain important facts related to the G20. Now, we see here, these are the previous year questions that were asked about G20. It was asked that which of the following countries are part of the G20. Now, this is the question. Now, in this context, you have to remember certain countries that are part of the G20 from the prelims perspective. Now, in 2023 also, it was asked about G20. It asked like G20 group was originally established as a platform for finance ministers and central bank governors to discuss emerging economic issues. So, yes, this statement is correct. Now, another important thing is digital public infrastructure is one of the India G20 priorities. Yes, this is also correct. Hence, the answer is this both 1 and 2. Now, In the first question, the option is A. Argentina, Mexico, South Africa, Turkey are the countries of G20. Now you can eliminate some other options also, such as see Iran. Iran cannot be the member, right? But in that way, you can eliminate that option. Now we will see certain facts about G20. Now theme of the 2024 is building a just world and sustainable planet. Remember this theme, UPSC has a habit of asking about themes in the prelims. And the host is Brazil, Rio de Janeiro city. Now next, G20 has a no permanent secretariat or a headquarters. The country which hosts that summit has a presidency and decides the agenda. It constitutes around two-thirds of the world population, 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the global trade. UPSC may not ask these questions. You can use this in mains examination. Now, the presidents of G20 rotates annually among the member countries. That's why last year it is India, now it is Brazil. Now, the key areas of focus in this 2024 G20 is social inclusion by addressing the global inequalities, reforms of international institutions such as UNSC, energy transition that indicates emphasis on sustainable development. Now, these are the member countries you have to remember, especially from the film's perspective, as it was seen, it was asked previously, right, in 2020. Now, countries are Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, France, Germany, India, Indonesia, Italy, Japan, South Korea, UK, United States, European Union, and African Union. This African Union was added in the last G20 summit by India, right? Now, these are the things you have to remember from the plane's perspective. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this article is saying that Chennai Vladivostok Maritime Corridor is operational. Now, this is what said by the Sarbanand Sonowal, Minister of Shipping, Ports, etc. Now, see this map. Chennai to Vladivostok, and Vladivostok is part of the eastern Russia. Now, originally before that, we used to take the route of like this. We used to follow the Red Sea, and it takes a lot of time. It leads to a lot of fuel, lot of cost of trade also, etc. Now, because of this, it reduced the trade from 40 days to 24 days. Now, it reduced the distance by 40%. Now, this is important, significant by reducing the fuel, cost of goods, time taken, issue of piracy, etc. Now, this indicating the prosperity of trade relations between India and Russia. Now, you can use them in the example regarding international relations in GS2. Maybe in prelims it may not be directly asked. You can use this example in international relations, especially regarding India, Russia, India, USA, and questions related like that. Okay. Now, this is what the article. Now, this news is saying that Lagacharla tribal people meet heads of the NHRC Women's Commission in Delhi. Now, this is what the context of the news. Now, the context of the news is that there is issue of land acquisition by the tribals, especially in the Telangana. Now, this is what the issue. But from the examination perspective, the body mentioned here, NHRC is very important from the examination perspective, especially in GS paper 2, the syllabus topic mentioned about statutory bodies and constitutional bodies. And in GS2, there is a concept called vulnerable sections also. Now, these tribals also part of the vulnerable sections, right? Even if question asks about NHRC, you can use these topics or points that we are discussing today. Even if these don't ask, you can mention these points, such as the issues of land acquisitions faced by the tribal people in any question related to the tribals. Now, this is how you can smartly link a single news to the multiple syllabus topics in the UPSC, right? Okay. Now, how this is relevant? If you see the previous year question, especially in GS paper 2, there is a question asked. Though the Human Rights Commission have contributed immensely to the protection of human rights in India, yet they have failed to assert themselves against the mighty and powerful, analyze the structural and practical limitations, and suggest certain remedial measures. Now, in this context, we will discuss some important prelims and mains points related to the National Human Rights Commission. Okay. Now, from the prelims point, you have to know that this is a statutory body established under the Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. Remember this. And next, yes, this act is in line with the Paris principles. Now, chairman. Now, this body consists of a chairperson, 5 full-time members, and 7 deemed members. Now, the chairperson can be Chief Justice of India or the Judge of the Supreme Court. Okay, it can be anyone. Now, the appointment procedure is that it is the president who appoints this chairman and members. Now, how the president will appoint? Based on the recommendation given by a 6-member committee. Now, this 6-member committee consists of Prime Minister as the head of the committee, Speaker of Lok Sabha, Deputy Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Now, remember this fact, UPSC has a habit of interchanging the words. Here it is Deputy Chairman, not Chairman of Rajya Sabha. Next, there is leaders of opposition in both the houses. And again, this is important from the prelims. There is leaders of opposition in both the houses, not just only Lok Sabha. and next Union Home Minister. Now this can be asked as a prelims fact. Okay. Another important thing is that the term of the members and chairman is about 3 years or until they attain the age of 70 years. Now remember these facts from the prelims perspective. Now we will analyze certain things from the mains perspective also. As you know, Constitution provides to everyone fundamental rights, but sometimes these fundamental rights are violated in various ways. It may be police brutalities, corruption by the executive, not doing duty by the executive officer, etc. In this way, people's fundamental rights are violated. Now, in this context, NHRC comes into the position. It ensures that government is accountable. If rights are violated, they question the government, they publicize the issue, they stand for the vulnerable people. Now, in this way, it is important NHRC role to discuss. Now, if you see the role of NHRC, it has the powers of the civil court. It can gather the evidence. It can ask for any documents of the government, things like that. That's why it has the powers of civil court. Now it can investigate the complaints of human rights violations either by the complaint or by the suo motu. Now it can recommend the action to the government or authority if someone is responsible for the violation based on the recommendations or committee reports. It can approach the Supreme Court or a High Court for directing to the officers. It can recommend interim relief to the victim of their family. Right? There are many times we have seen that NHRC involved in the violation of fundamental rights from the government authorities. Right? Now, issuing directions based on the seriousness of the complaint and registering a criminal case. Now, in this way, it stands for the people. It supports the people in filing FIRs. Right? It was involved in awareness campaigns, especially about the human rights, legal rights that are available to the vulnerable sections. Now, vulnerable sections, mostly women, children, they cannot exercise their rights. Now, in this way, NHRC comes into play. They support them, handhold them in protecting their rights. The many people, because of low literacy or lack of awareness or backwardness, they don't know about their rights. They play a role of awareness through various campaigns. In this way, NHRC has a crucial role in protecting the human rights in India. If you see their effectiveness, there are certain challenges regarding National Human Rights Commission. Now we'll see that weak investigation mechanism because of lack of dedicated staff. Now, if you know that NHRC depends upon the police officer and other government officers, they don't have their own ground level dedicated staff to investigate the matter and look for what's happened at the ground level. Now, this is one of the lacking. Now, another important thing is time limit. Now, complaints are only accepted or entertained within a year. If the anything violation completed or crossed 1 year, it won't take such complaint. Now, this is against the vulnerable section because many times vulnerable sections are not in a position to complain unless and until someone supports them because of lack of social influence, right? Now, next, non-binding decisions. Now, the decisions of NHRC are not enforceable because it has no legal authority. Its decisions are only recommendatory in nature. Now, the funding issues. Now, NHRC itself has insufficient for effective functioning. Now, you have seen that there are very less instances where you have seen that awareness campaigns are happened by the NHRC, right? This is an instance of funding issue. Next, post-retirement roles. Now, it is being criticized that most of the members of the NHRC are someone related to the judiciary. Now, it is being said that it's like quid pro quo position and their appointment is influenced by the political positions, hence there is no proactiveness in the organization. Now, limited powers. Now, another challenge is that it has no authority to seek information from the central government. There are a lot of hierarchy involved. This is one of the important things. They cannot act on armed force violation. What does it mean? Because there are several instances where war-torn areas, especially in the areas of South Power, there are human rights violations by the armed forces. In such cases, this NHRC does not have a role. No, excludes human rights violation by private entities. Now, this NHRC is about fundamental rights violation by the state, but not by the private entities. Now, this is what one of the challenge. Now, the way forward is that there is a need of requirement of including RTA activists, civil society members, social activists, human rights activists into the body of NHRC so that it can function very independently and proactively. And another thing is that NHRC needs to establish an independent cadre of staff with relevant expertise at the ground level so that to investigate the cases autonomously, etc. Now, these are the things you have to remember from the mains perspective. Now, coming to the next article. Now, this news article is about Article 356. What it is saying? Manipur has a case for imposing Article 356. Now, the author of this article is saying that Manipur as a state has seen all the conditions that are required for imposing the present rule under Article 356. Now, what is Article 356? Now, Article 356 says that if any state is not following or not functioning as per the Constitution, a present rule can be imposed. Now, it is being said that under Article 355, it is the responsibility of the Union government to ensure that stability and prevent any internal disturbance in the states. Now, this is what mentioned in the Article 355. Now, not only that, under Article 356, President has two conditions. Whether if the state government is not functioning as per the constitution, if he is satisfied that he can impose president rule, or he can impose president rule based on the report given by the governor. Now, this is what the one of the things. Under Article 365, if the state is not following the directions given by the union government, in that case also a president rule can be imposed. Now, these are the conditions that can be imposed. Now, what is meant by the not following constitutional machinery? See, constitution has a obligation of protecting fundamental rights, protecting sovereignty, integrity, preventing internal disturbance, right? Now, all these are the constitutional features. Now, recently, since the last 18 months, there is a lot of ethnic violence happening in the Manipur, right? Now, state is not controlling. Now, we have seen the witness like women paraded nakedly, abduction of women, killing of children. Now, all these are indicating a lot of human rights violations. Now, state is not functioning effectively. There is a issue of law and order problems beyond the control of the state government. Hence, there is a need of involvement of the central government. Now, in this context, the author is saying that there is a need of imposition of president rule. Now, this is what the context of the news. Now, generally, it is being said that if the president rule imposed, then there can be instances of political stability in the long term. Otherwise, anti-social elements or people involving in insurgency become very active. Now, in this context, Article 356 of president rule is considered as inevitable. Now, that is what this article is saying. Now, try to answer this previous year question based on our discussion as a homework. Now, question can be like, what is the criteria to impose president rule? What are the consequences of president rule? What are the Supreme Court's view? Now, you may know that Supreme Court in SR Bommai case said that imposition of president rule should not be arbitrary. The grounds of imposition should be reasonable and rational. Right? Now, the report given by the governor to the president for imposition of president rule, such grounds should be widely publicized. Now, this is what said by the Supreme Court in SR Bommai case. Now, use all this context to answer this mains question. Okay? Now, this article is saying that Sanjay Murthy is appointed as new CAG. Now, CAG means Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, this article is important, especially from the GS paper 2 and from the film's perspective also. Now, if you see GS paper 2, it has a syllabus topic called Constitutional Bodies. And not only that, previously there is a question directly asked about CAG. It said that CAG has a very vital role to play. Explain how this is reflected in its method of appointment and terms of his appointment, as well as a range of powers that he or she as a CAG can exercise. Now, this was asked in 2018. Now, in this context, we will understand the importance of the CAG from the mains perspective. Now, you know that government use public money. We pay direct taxes, indirect taxes, right? Now, these are the taxes that are used for the public welfare, infrastructure development, etc. Now, in this context, government is hence accountable that this public money is used for the public interest, right? Now, this is the context. Now, in this context, CAG has a very important role to ensure that the public money used for the purpose it has been allocated in the right amount, in the right way, for the right purpose. Now, this is what the CAG used to do. Now, constitutionally, if you see that the constitutional provisions, Article 148 to 152, 151, sorry, these are the provisions that are contained in the Constitution regarding the Comptroller and Auditor General. Now, what are the certain functions? Especially before that, we will discuss something like how it is appointed. CAG is appointed by the President. Now, how President appoints? He has no discretion. So, President appoints someone who is recommended by the Council of Ministers. Now, whom Council of Ministers recommend? Hence, no one knows, because there is no procedure or criteria that is established legally, constitutionally. Hence, this is what the criticism, that there is no transparency in appointment of CAG, as there is no procedure. Rather, there is no even committee also. If you see NHRC body just now, there is a selection committee. There is no selection committee in appointment of CAG also. Right? This is what the criticism that is there regarding appointment of CAG. Now, you have to remember the fact that CAG is appointed by the President. Now, other important thing is that as per the CAG Act of 1971, CAG assumes a role for 6 years or 65 years, up till 65 years. Now, this is what given in the 1971. Remember this fact that this was not given in the Constitution. This is as per the CAG Act of 1971. Now, UPSC has a habit of questions like this is mentioned in the Constitution. No, this is not mentioned in the Constitution because Constitution empowered the Parliament that the tenure, duties, and functions of the CAG as a body can be determined by the Parliament. Now, in this power, CAG Act 1971 was enacted by the Parliament. Now, in this act, it was mentioned that the tenure of the CAG is 6 years or up till the 65 years, that person. Now, this is what the things you have to remember from the prelims perspective. Now, from the mains perspective, you have to remember certain things, that functions of the CAG. The functions of the CAG is saying that there are two types of functions, right? One is constitutional and functions given under the CAG Act of 1971. Now, it can prescribe the format of accounts that has to be maintained by the state and central government. Now, as the name suggests, that it has the function of auditing the expenditures of center and states. Now, remember this, that UPSC has a habit of question that CAG audits accounts of only center but not states. Now, that is a wrong statement. It audits both center and states. Now, these are the things you have to remember. And next, either CAG submits the reports to the president at the center and governor for the states. Now, these president will further submit the reports to the parliament. And in the parliament, there is a committee, you know, that public accounts committee. These public accounts committee audits the reports of the CAG. Now, where you have to use in the examination, even the question directly does not ask about CAG, you can use smartly this question in another question. For example, if you see year after year, there is a question asked about how the parliament is ensuring the accountability of the executive. In that, one of the important issues is financial accountability. Now, this financial accountability can be maintained by the reports of the CAG. There you can use this example of CAG, right? In this way, you can link smartly to various syllabus topics of single news, right? Next important thing, CAG certifies net proceeds of taxes and this certification is final. Now, another important thing is it audits expenditures of Consolidated Fund of India for both center, states, and union territories. Here, union territories means union territories that has legislatures. Now, it also audits expenditures of Contingency Fund of India also, not just consolidated, but also Contingency Fund of India and Public Account of India also. Remember these things. Now, other important thing is that it also audits the expenditures of government companies which are established under the Companies Act of 2013. And also, it audits accounts and statements of the departments that are procuring some stocks that have accounting registers, etc. Now, and also CAG audits the reports of the corporations that are government corporations in which under which it was established a statute, right? There is a statute to establish corporations. If that statute allows that auditing of CAG is allowed, then it is allowed. Next, if any audit is recommended or required by the president or governor, it will audit. For example, it may be the local bodies, etc. Now, you may have seen that many times CAG submitted reports regarding local bodies' finances. It is saying that local bodies are not self-generating or not revenue generating, things like that. It is based on the governor's or president's recommendation. Now, these are the functions of the CAG that you have to remember. There are certain criticisms regarding the role of Comptroller and Auditor General in India. One of the important limitation is that post facto role. That means CAG audits the expenditure of the government after it has been done. Now, contrary, in UK, there is a convention that prior permission of CAG is required to withdraw any money from the public exchequer, but that is not there in India. Now, this is what one of the limitation and suggestion can be given from the UK perspective. Now, other important thing is biased appointment. As I said, there is no procedure or qualification criteria to establish a person as a CAG, right? There is no criteria given in the constitution nor in any statute. So that's why it is considered as a biased appointment. There may be concerns of neutrality. There is tenure limits. As it said, there are tenure of 6 years, but it is been said that people are appointed for just 2 or 3 years. Hence, it will be difficult for creating any reforms. And another important restricted scope. What does it mean? Because CAG cannot audit every report of corporation. Now, it is being said that only if and only the statute of that particular corporation or body of the government allows it, then only it can do it. Now, recommendatory nature. Now, we know that many of the state governments are criticized for increasing public debt, fiscal deficit, and non-functioning of the local bodies. Now, this has been highlighted by the CAG in many times, but a strong ground level action has not been taken. No delay in receiving information. What does it mean? Now, CAG for auditing something or expenditure, it has to take information receipts statements from the various departments. Now, it has been said that there is a delay in response given by these departments, and hence CAG has no enforceable mechanisms to address these delays. Now, other important thing, reduced reports. What does it mean? Now, it is being said that in the last 10 years, the reports that has been given by the CAG to the Parliament has been reduced by 75%. Now, this indicates the challenge of financial accountability. Now, other important limitations are single member body. Now, presently, CAG is a single member body. Now, it is being said that it has to be a multi member body. Why? So that decisions can be taken on majority basis and consensus basis. And this also ensures accountability. Right. So, in this context, these are the limitations. Some of the suggestions that can be seen are now we can take the best practices such as UK. Now, UK has a convention that if we take any money from the public exchequer, it has to take the permission of Comptroller and Auditor General. Not only that, COP has to function qualitative purpose, not quantitative purpose. For example, it is being said that CAG is functioning only for or auditing something that whether it is taken as per the government law or not. For example, Parliament allocated, let's say, 10 rupees to for a particular scheme or 10 crore for a particular scheme. Now, it is being said that CAG is auditing only that if this 10 crore is allocated to that particular scheme or not. It does not studying that what is the effectiveness of the scheme. So there is a need of qualitative study that is being done in the UK, US, etc. Something like that. So these are what the suggestions. Another suggestion is there is a need of transparency in the appointment procedure. There is a need of amendment of the CAG Act 1972 so that it can have enforcement in receiving information from the departments. These are the suggestions that can be taken. Now, in this way, please remember this fact. This question is very important, especially from the JS paper 2. You can use these points in your mains examination also. So, this is what for today. Thank you. Have a nice day.